GameStop employees of Reddit, what are some of your horror stories? I was an assistant manager when one of the Madden games came out. 04, maybe? We were doing a big midnight opening for it and everybody was having a great time waiting for the game, which we were picking up from another store about 30 miles away. Around 1100, after people had been waiting for 2 hours after the mall closed, I got a phone call. The game wasn't coming. I almost broke down, sitting behind the register, dreading the thought of telling everybody that they'd just wasted their time. To make matters worse, another store within walking distance of us got their games. I just wanted to die that night. I am so grateful that our customers took it well and didn't get too angry. Had a couple come in to return a Sesame Street video game and a controller. They had a receipt from over a year ago. The game was scratched to hell, and the controller was full of dried soda. They said it didn't work anymore, shocker, and were furious when I wouldn't give them their money back. Like standing there screaming at me. I was the manager, so I had no one else there to back me up. It was crazy. Their kid was bawling, the lady was swearing like a syphilitic sailor, and the husband couldn't finish a sentence. Pretty sure they were both super high too. So that was fun. When the PS2 came out, I was assistant manager and my manager would sell them out of the back room at a markup. Such a snake. I took the demo Xbox home with a copy of Halo before the system launched one night and had a 4-player all-night party. One of our other local stores had someone dig through the outside wall and steal everything out of their back room. Also, when you get done alphabetizing the Wii games and notice your hands are covered in mystery sticky stuff from all of the filthy children handling the cases. That was pretty gross. One time a woman screamed at me because her kid was tearing open a toy before paying for it, and I kindly told him to wait a little bit. She seemed on the fence on whether she wanted to buy the toy or not for her kid, so you know I wasn't glad that her kid was already ripping it open. She then proceeded to scream at me for being really awful with kids, a horrible person, bad at my job, etc. Also, she wanted to complain to the manager if I ever talked to her kid like that again. She then angrily paid and walked out of the store. Also, people tinkering, modding their console and then trying to return it because it doesn't work anymore and angrily insisting on having it bought that way in GameStop. Former employee. 2 wonderful stories. Older lady brings in a bag. She looks like an addict and she wants to sell her Wii. I put my hand in the bag and it's soaking wet, cat piss. She was furious I wouldn't take it. From that day forward, made every customer take all trades out of bags themselves. My first store was long and I had a kid and mom in back. Mom wasn't paying attention at all. 8-year-old walking around. Gets really quiet. Then mom rushes the kid out of the store. Go back there and he took a shit on the floor. Watch the tape, mom finds him squatting. Lets him finish, then takes him out. A gentleman comes in to buy one of our old 360 bundles used, the old system that required the HD. He brings it back a few days later and complains that it doesn't work. We start our normal troubleshooting methods in store. We couldn't figure anything out. So I do a swap, take his old system in as defective, then sell him a replacement bundle. I go through and try to wipe the system so we can ship it back to the warehouse. Cockroaches start crawling out of the system instead. I freak out. Throw the system in one of our giant shopping bags, throw that in a box, tape it shut, and throw that in another bag. My manager tells me to just shrink it out, meaning we take the loss and destroy it in the back. I take it out to the parking lot and have to throw it around to destroy it. These cockroaches freaking scatter like marbles on the floor. I'm dancing around the parking lot on my tiptoes to avoid the flood. It was awful. Not an employee, but I was waiting in line to buy a game, and a guy came in with his 8-ish YO child I assumed was his son, and pointed the kid to the Nintendo section as he went over to PlayStation. I was daydreaming, off in my own world, and it took me a second to realize a moment later that I was hearing water splashing. I turned around to see the kid projectile vomiting all over the floor and the Nintendo games. The employee at the counter, the lady in front of me, and I all just watched this child empty his guts onto the floor, before the father comes up to the son. "You okay, bud?" "Yeah. Alright, let's get out of here." And without a word or even looking at anyone else, the two leave the store. Once gone, the three of us exchange wild looks, and the employee tells us it's his first day running the store on his own, and he doesn't have any cleaning supplies or know what to do. Poor guy. Parents, please don't let your kids throw up in GameStop. Worked at G's a long time ago, but I'll never forget this one. One night a guy brought in a really dusty and dirty GameCube wanting cash, of course. I asked him if it worked and he said he didn't know because he hadn't played it in a long time. I told him that we have to check every console, and when I turned it on and opened the lip, about 100 roaches came running out all over the counter. I worked in a store where theft was a very common occurrence. But this one dude, he nabbed one of the cheap controllers off the wall from the back of the store, puts it in his backpack. Then comes over to the counter. He reaches across the counter, opens a drawer and steals a brand new game out of the drawer, takes it away from the register, opens it, waits in line, trades the game in for 25 bucks. Then he asks me to look for something in one of the bottom drawers and he steals back the game he just traded in a second time. After that he immediately left the store before I could notice he was gone. I gotta give him credit, he had some slick balls. So many other sketchy things too, but this one I just had to laugh at. I got two stories quick. One is a guy who would come in all the time to ask about/buy obscure Vita dating sims and asking inappropriate questions like if the next Dragon Age at this time would have been Inquisition was going to finally have sex scenes in it. Next one is New Year's Day, miserable in working already, it's super early and first customer of the day, of the whole year, is this like 7-foot tall guy who comes in asking for AV cables for a PS4 cause the one he just bought didn't have one. We immediately tell him the PS4 only uses HDMI and so it wouldn't have AV cables, even confirming with him, you mean those red, yellow and white cables? He start getting mad and asks again for the cables, which we again tell him don't exist. Maybe there's an adapter or something, but I've never seen one and we don't have them here regardless, maybe check Best Buy. Guy immediately starts screaming, you racist motherfuckers, get me this cable. I'm homeless, I just bought this thing for my grandkids. You're all racist white devil fuckers. Thankfully I froze in fear and confusion and my boss took over and just scooted the guy out the door. Hell of a way to start the year. A woman comes in to trade in an old Xbox 360 in a box. I open the box and the smell hits me. Rat droppings, grime, cockroaches and all have spent time in this thing. Luckily my manager noticed and we were able to decline the trade. Spent 5 minutes disinfecting the counter before I helped the next customer. One time I was trading in a PS4, I think. We were chatting while I was wiping his hard drive, and commenting on all his achievements. Sometime during this conversation he got nostalgic and changed his mind, but not before I had already deleted all his data. Felt terrible. One homeless looking guy comes in during one of the few times I'm alone in the store. He was dragging around a trash bag, and I was doing my best to keep him in eyesight as he was all kinds of sketchy. He managed to stuff an Xbox 360 in the bag and walk out, but I ran out and asked him to give it back, which he did, saying please don't call the cops. I did? The last one kinda shook me. This woman comes in with a gaggle of kids, maybe 4? They were all terrors, running around to different parts of the store, yelling, grabbing things and rearranging them, seemingly causing distractions while this woman tried on 3 separate occasions to get behind the counter. They end up buying something, but then I notice under this big box the oldest kid has picked up, he'd stuffed his hands full of the little DS games that were on the go back section on the counter. There was more here but I've lost some of the details, but it really gave me the impression this was all coordinated by their mother. It's one thing to see adults steal, to see kids who are encouraged to do so, just terribly sad. I used to be the ASM of a GameStop but nothing really out of the ordinary happened there. Just a lot of lingerers. When I was the manager of a local game store though, there was definitely a lot of wild stories. The one that sticks out the most is this old dude we called Psycho Sexy who would come in every Monday morning, try to sell me or whoever was working bootleg porn DVDs. He would tell us they were good for busting fat ass nuts too and that he'd sell them to us super cheap. Every Monday he'd come in, open up his duffel bag of bootleg porn, get refused then leave and come back the following Monday. This went on for almost 3 years. I was hired to help open a new store. A store where the manager was male, and everyone he hired? Female. He was definitely trying to cultivate a hot GameStop kind of situation. Word got around, and we had people coming in to visit ours when they had other stores much closer to where they lived. They didn't really buy anything, they kind of just lurked around for hours at a time, chatting the staff up. There were days when they'd wait for us to close up, that was kind of scary. I was eventually let go for not being friendly enough, which was apparently about 3 months before the manager had a total screaming meltdown during store hours, declared himself High Archangel, threw some shit at a customer and was later picked up by an ambulance. So I guess my horror story is the whole damn job. The guy who comes in with obviously stolen stuff but can't be called out on it, so he just keeps it up. I once had a lady and her teenage son come in to trade in several DVDs and games they had just stolen from the Walmart behind the strip mall where our store was. Walmart employee calls me to ask if they are in my store and says the cops are on the way, so stall or do what you can to keep them there. I said sure. I told them the cash versus store credit value of their items without mentioning that I can't even take them because they are still wrapped in the cellophane. I walk them around the store and talk about which games are the best value for the money, etc. The cops show up and ask them to step outside and I just smile and go back behind the counter. They follow the police out and one officer comes back a minute later to get the merchandise. Last I heard about it. Not a horror story but definitely weird. Former G's employee here. Worked in a store on the edge of a super sketchy part of Akron, Ohio. Back in the PS2 era, a guy brought in a box of trades. There were 3 games. Leisure Suit Larry, Playboy the Mansion, The Guy Game. The rest of the box was nothing but porn on VHS. He was politely asked to leave. He asked us why. My coworker's response had me keeling over. Because Terry's jizz all over your shit. He left.